Welcome to the Amatoria podcast with Marvin Allen and Justin Dong. Join us for a journey through the art of love across the world, guided by timeless wisdom and lived experience.
I feel like we're the glue. Not to sound so self-righteous, but I think we are kind of tying together generations, translating and transcribing what Zan and Johnny found, that timeless message of that place that a lover exists in the heart of a woman, and translating it for modern times. That's the real sense I get. And so it's really inspiring to hear guys like Wade meeting with guys like CJ. You would never expect these guys to meet. CJ grew up in a rough childhood with biker guys and dark masculine tattoo kind of guys, and Wade was probably growing up disconnected from his sexuality because obviously desire is a sin, and etc. Right? So there's that sense of wow, to imagine that can happen. I mean, look at us meeting, from a guy on the internet whose book we read, whose 50 videos we watched multiple times, and then to go to his conference and to meet together and to meet for only, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds. And hey, you're Marvin, you're Justin. Oh, and you're gone with that girl. I see. I'll talk to you later at the conference the next day. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to catch up. And there's just this idea of course, we talk about brotherhood. And in the context of Wade specifically, like how cool that everyone's on their own journey. It's not copy paste. It's not templated. It's every man goes in search of his own meaning, and the light and the fire that others bring back can be used as guideposts and hints or clues to your own unfolding. And I wonder across the network and brotherhood, how many years and decades of wisdom, how many lifetimes of wisdom can we get from the top down, from our elders, from our sages, from our mentors, from our inspirations, modern day heroes. Hang around your heroes, San Pereon says. And how does that affect us, our generation, and how does that affect the future generation when we are old and the world hasn't ended? Because people have been saying that for thousands of years. What about, what does that look like? What do you make of that, Marvin?
Yeah, I love how you said that because, I mean, in a way, we're saying nothing new. We're just transmitting kind of what others have said before, but through the lens of our own experience. So every time we kind of absorb the knowledge and wisdom of others and then implement it in our life. And then through that experience that we have, we modify or maybe add our own coloring to the wisdom that's been passed down from the sages before us, starting from Casanova and way beyond. So it's very and that's what makes it interesting, that everybody who goes through on this journey adds their own touch, their own perspective, their own highlights onto the wisdom that's shared. I believe there are some fundamental truths that will always be true, I suppose, in life, when it comes to life, to relationships, to women. But if you look at the different kind of mentors that we have and that we talk to, like Zan, like Johnny, like others, they're all very different in their own right. So there's no copy pasting. You can't just become someone else. You have to take what others have experienced and learned and shared and mold that into your own kind of being. So I think we're in the process of doing that, and we're still young, sort of. We still have time to go to build our own version of this philosophy. But yeah,
But
it's
do we
exciting to be
really?
in the process. And well,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. You're right. How much time do we really have? We don't know. So it's very exciting to be on the journey, and someone like Wade, who has his own journey to go through, and maybe eventually he will join us in Bucharest. Maybe we'll share some wisdom there. You never know what's going to happen, but just, yeah, listening to him was really inspiring. Because I think that's the. I mean, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, but I think that's one of the hardest parts about the journey is to start, to leave everything behind, and to just set out into the unknown. At least for me, that
Yeah.
was one of the most difficult parts.
It first step is always the hardest. Be less generic. If we can liken it to the metaphor of it's easier to make $1 million than it is to make $10 million. Right? That logic kind of follows, right? Your first million should be
Mm.
it's much more difficult. Just like your first step into the unknown when you leave everything behind is perhaps the most challenging step of all. Because even though you might put yourself into more situations in the world that'll, really rattle your comfort cage of security, and wow, I almost died. You wouldn't have been in that situation if you hadn't gone into the world. What's to say you weren't already dead before in your old life? You just didn't know it yet. And there was two words that came up, and that is one. I was listening to a YouTube video before this, and it's crazy because it was probably generated by AI. And crazy times we live in. And it was talking about individuation and how women fall in love with they idealize men as fantasy figures, and if men don't live up to that fantasy figure, women become disappointed in them, and then marriages and relationships fall apart. On the mirror side, from a lover's perspective, and to echo Johnny's wisdom, he's saying, well, if the man that she fell in love with was a performance from you, if you weren't who you actually were at the start, and she fell in love with someone else, of course it's going to fall apart. So this idea that, and you think of Carl Jung, this academic, and Johnny, this uh, magnificent mythical lover, who was self-described as short, as old, fat, heavy, and balding, with the full head of hair on his shoulders. Can't think of two different men that came to that same destination of that same universal truth. And so I think even in the description of our podcast, Marvin, it's you and I are modern day adventurers. I like to think, even if it's just silly in my head, like being mighty on a balcony. And there's a blend of timeless wisdom and lived experience because the journey's different for you, for me, for Stan, for Anthony, for Zan, for Jordan, except there's that universal, you can say mythic dimension or that universal layer of truth. But our stories are different, our upbringings are different. But I still think there's a sort of collaboration in the world at an interesting point in time. And maybe you could help me expand more on that. Like that difference between collective journey, the myth of Ars Amorata, of the Amorati, of our brotherhood as a whole, and also that individual myth, that personal dream. That's a quote. I'm
Hmm.
going to find it so I don't misquote it. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on these themes. And
Yeah, I
one more
suppose
thing.
we're. Yeah.
Sorry, Marvin. We're expanding the discussion a bit more. We were talking before this, Marvin, and I think instead of going into the generic dating, shallow, surface, feel good advice that is most of what is on YouTube, we don't make a career out of shitting on people. It's just kind of as it is. At least I'll speak for myself. We want to explore more what's on our forefront, what we are grappling with at the edge of our understanding with this podcast. So there's a bit of a shift happening. Very spontaneous to say it like this, but just for you listeners, let us know what you think. If you
Yeah.
prefer the old format or what's on the edge for us, as writers and artists and things like that. So yeah, I hand it off to you, Marvin.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's a good point to highlight because just to expand the scope of what we're talking about a bit more. Plus, I'm in my basement right now, so the scope has changed in that regard as well. And yeah, want to include because as we talked about before, the art of the lover, the art of love, it's all encompassing. It encompasses all of life, all of art, all of writing, poetry, all the arts that are kind of included in that pursuit of love. So it's really kind of almost unnatural to limit it to strictly dating, even though that's maybe what most guys or a lot of guys are starting out with when they come to the beginning of this journey. But it's I mean, what's attracted me about Zan's philosophy from the start was that it was always more. It was always about more than just that. Yeah, sure, it was. He talked about beautiful women and having these amazing experiences with them and the Alabaster Girl, but it was always embedded in a bigger picture of a life well lived, a life that you chose to live, a life that you can be look back on and be happy with, be proud of, make the best memories possible in life. So this kind of embedding in that bigger picture, in the bigger perspective that Zen has always brought to dating itself, that was really enticing to me from the beginning. So I think it will be to many others as well.
A beautiful sentiment, man. Because we think about the art of love, and let's say you're either single, you're dating, or you're in a relationship. You can oscillate between those three for an entire lifetime. The art of love, and this idea, and I'd like to shift the conversation to talk a bit about personal mythology. I found the quote, by the way. It's by Campbell, not by Jung, who was inspired heavily by Jung. Myths are, excuse me, myths are public dreams. Dreams are private myths. Ask himself, what is the personal myth that I am living? You know, and to tie that to your share, Marvin, there's a certain mythology about some men might aspire to be a great husband and a great father to a bunch of children, Genghis Khan style, whatever. And some men might aspire to be the greatest lover that she holds in her heart, that she remembers and looks back, even if she doesn't end up with him because he's crazy, adventurous guy. I talk about Wade who gave everything up for adventure. He's the greatest lover that she's ever had. That she, even if she doesn't brag about it because of circumstance or society, she holds dear to her heart because it was a sacred experience in this. It's like Jordan described it one time, head coach of ours, Amorati, Jordan Luke Collier. He said to experience heavenly love on earth, there's something more to this whole message than just let's go, girl. Like, like just just animalistic sex, although that is not a bad thing. There's more. There's a divine transcendent element, as well as perfectly paired. I come from Chinese philosophy. I believe in Taoism and yin yang, and simultaneously have a transcendent experience and wild sex at the same time. And I think that was the nature of that discussion with Wade. That instead of just being holier than thou, his Puritan, Victorian ideals that we often allude to, and to integrate that. Even last episode, Marvin, we were talking about how even in these Victorian and Puritan times, like people were horny as they've always been, and they just found more creative ways to circumvent the rules. And so this marriage of the sacred and the profane is my main takeaway from our conversation with Wade, because you can have both. You can be a good Christian man that loves to have great sex. One of the brothers in Amorati, his name is Andre, he was posting about that. That sense of, yep, I love beauty and fuck, you're hot. Like in this one life, how many people have as much sex as they want? It can be a beautiful thing. I ramble a lot, so Marvin, feel free to
No,
interrupt
it's
me whenever.
very valuable what you're saying. I
Yeah.
and it's really, that's a really really good point. Like the combining of the sacred and the profane. There's something very interesting about that, because I think about it in terms of, aren't you kind of denying, let's say, the universe, God, nature, whatever you want to call it? Aren't you denying their, I would say, I don't know, mission to you? If you're denying your every desire, including your sexual desire, your lust, your desire for a woman, for life in general, aren't you, if you suppress that, you're kind of denying, you're saying kind of no to existence and being itself, like the way you were born or created, whatever you want to believe in. And I mean, that's in a way that I think even Zan said it in a way that like even that's kind of a sin, right? Denying your own desire and denying who you are fully expressed in the world. That's kind of a sin too, right?
Well, castrating yourself and chopping your own balls off, rejecting yourself so girls don't have to, is a sin for sure, right? Yeah, you're saying it great. Keep going.
Yeah. So yeah, I resonate really strongly with what you said, and you're right. Wade is a living, breathing example of that, coming from his Christian background, where everything sexual is kind of suppressed and not really tolerated or not really wanted. And as I mentioned in the last episode, the life in Vienna in the 19th century, the Victorian age, the all of that, it was the same thing. Like it was not really tolerated. It was just suppressed, and then it lived underground. And that's the same thing. Like you can talking about Jung and the unconscious and the shadow. Like if you suppress these things that are consciously there, they will become part of the unconscious and the shadow, and at some point that will come back to bite you in the ass.
There's that sense of wholeness I guess everyone is searching for. That comes with integrating your shadow. And if we can apply a diagnosis on the cultural landscape, because we live in an ugly culture, I'll say it, and I'll be blasted for it, but we live in an ugly culture where beauty is not a priority, and I'm not the first to say this. And perhaps what it is I'll make a couple quotations here. For one, all over the world, women are strong and the men are not. Women are strong because the men are not. And writes about that and talks about it in his speeches. Number two, women have a bad relationship to their animus because they have a bad relationship to their masculine. So it doesn't let them be vulnerable and soft and nurturing and caring in the way because, and you can, it's not to blame women and it's also not to blame men, but there needs to be work that needs to be done together. Men are not in touch with their anima. So because they don't have a good relationship to their feminine side, they search for it externally in the validation of women. Whereas a true lover or a man that can actually be happy in a relationship, I'm talking absolutes, and this is my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong. A man can only be truly great lover to a woman, whether he's husband or fantasy, after he integrates his anima and doesn't need her at all. He doesn't need her at all. He would love to have her in his life because she adds things that he cannot create in his own life. Women and men have this sort of polarity, duality, yin
Do you
yang.
want to
That is,
explain briefly what anima and animus is? A Jungian
yes. Well,
concept, right? Jungian
to
concept.
say it very simply at a fifth grade level, I would say anima is, well, word endings, right? A is anima, is feminine. A man has an anima. So he's biologically a man. Funny. But he's also has a feminine side. There's qualities that are decidedly feminine. And that integration, if you don't have it within yourself, you're going to go and find it outside. So if you don't have a good relationship, you can talk about childhood patterns like with Freud and things like that, and mother complexes and Oedipus, things like that. But at a very basic level, if a man isn't in touch with his feminine qualities, then he's going to have a nasty, unhealthy relationship with externally with the feminine, with his mother, with his sisters, with women that he meets. And the same for women. They become too manly, quote unquote, if they don't have a good relationship with their animus. And there's some psycho spiritual qualities to that, which we could go into infinite depth with, but I think that's my best attempt at saying that simply. And so this balance of, and the real idea is men are not being men and women are not being women. And there's a restoration that needs to happen because everyone's all confused. Each one wants to be the other. And there's a beauty about the way of a man and a woman. There's a timeless beauty about that. The way that it's always been. That's gone through generations of all the ages of the world. Boy meets girl. Girl likes guy. Girl drops her handkerchief. Guy notices or doesn't notice. Makes a move. Lifelong love affair or not. Or just roommates after 5 years of relationship. There's something that's been lost, and reclamation that needs to happen. And I really like that we can stand Isaac Newton. If I'm to see far, it is because I stand on the shoulders of giants. We are, while we are, you and I, Marvin, because you're writing a book, writing a book as well, developing our own unique messages. I don't mind giving credit to Zan and our inspirations and these voices of light, because I think everyone has their own pathway to eternity. That can be through a magnificent ass. It's not some high and mighty concept. There's a lot of ideas in there. I hope it makes sense. And nor
Yes.
am I a psychologist by any. I just like to read Jung and Campbell. But there's there's something that has gone terribly wrong in this cultural landscape that we're in.
And I believe Jung was connected to something higher. I don't know. He was probably connected to his own collective unconscious, because the shit that he put on paper is kind of incredible. Like if he wasn't a wizard of some sort, I don't know. So it's very it's very rewarding to read Jung. I've done it multiple times. It's hard to understand, but he speaks in very archetypal terms, and it's very related to what Campbell writes about too. And I was thinking about what makes these people that we look up to, like Zan, like Johnny, what makes them so magnetic and attractive. And I think it's the fact that they are actually completely integrated as human beings. Like they have both sides of their being in one and fully presented and expressed to the world. I think that's a very attractive quality. And, hate him, love him or hate him, I think Donald Trump has a similar quality where he just fully is who he is. There's no taking back, no apologies, whether you agree with him or not. But there's some sense that these people command in the world because of their presence, because they can show up fully as who they are. And everybody recognizes this immediately when you meet a person like that who's fully free and integrated and expressed as they are in the world. I think you're right. I think that is probably what we all long for deep inside. And maybe it's more about shedding layers and becoming more of who we are from birth than it is about adding new stuff, as we talked about multiple times as well. But yeah, as you said, man, I think that's really it. Becoming a fully integrated human being with all your shadows and unconscious desires integrated in your person. I think that's really the holy grail. And yeah,
I was searching because you reminded me of something, and that is I think it was Nietzsche. I might be wrong. I don't want this to turn into a quote off abstract, inaccessible kind of thing. So we'll tell some stories and ground it in reality in a practical way. But someone, I think it was Nietzsche, was talking about the return to the child state. You know, Marvin? There's a progression that you go through.
maybe. Doesn't sound like
Oh,
Nietzsche
yes.
to me
So
now, but
Nietzsche
could
says
be.
the first stage is the camel, the second is the lion, and the third stage is the child. And in the context of what we're talking about, that return to wholeness, you're a boy and you're free, wildly free, and in love with the world, and everything's wow. You have these mighty, big, grand dreams of being everything, the king of everything, and the king of the hill. Games we play, in childhood, and that just gets assassinated, surgically excised from your personality. You get your balls chopped off, and to reclaim those qualities. And yeah, Donald Trump is one example in a long lineage of people that are unapologetically themselves, right? And you love him or hate him, you can't really feel neutral about the guy because people that matter are polarizing people. They don't try to keep everyone happy because every person that has gone in search of themselves realizes you can't keep everyone happy. So you might as well be your full self and find others or inspire others to be their full selves. And those are the people that you want to spend time with anyways. And
Yes.
Say Trump,
Yeah.
or archetypically, that's a king figure, the president of the United States. But historically, that's a Chinese emperor. That is a German chancellor. That is, it's the same kind of thing. And it's like by being lukewarm and mediocre and keeping everyone happy at the expense of yourself. There was a quote I heard in the video from earlier today. It was some men would they would value they are more afraid of being alone than afraid of being fake. And I was sitting there thinking about that, and wow, I wish I had heard that when I was 16, trying to be someone I wasn't to impress girls. And I already had everything,
Yeah.
that is actually attractive.
Yes. Yes.
Spontaneity. Yeah, we always make the boyhood example because every guy, every man that's listening to this was a boy once. You used to kiss girls on the lips, and you used to pull their hair and run away and do all these sorts of natural, wondrous, wow, kind of things. And where has that wonder gone? Maybe it's been washed away in this dark apocalyptic news cycle, media, social media, entertainment. People are proud of the fact that they are brain rotting on TikTok. They're like, yeah, I want to rot my brain for 20 minutes. What happened to us? you know?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like I was thinking about the Nietzsche quote, and it's very Nietzsche is such an interesting figure because he was kind of a tragic person, and he had a very difficult personal life, and but he I think he like Jung was connected to something else, and he was kind of the vessel for that to come down to earth. And even if he didn't impersonate it himself, he put down some very timeless wisdom on page, like way ahead of his time, basically predicting World War II and one and two, like 50 years before they happened. So yeah, he was onto something. And I was looking up this. I was also looking up a quote because I remember the lukewarm thing is very yeah. If you don't stand for what you actually are and represent in the world, and you're lukewarm and you don't polarize, then you can never be fully integrated, because then you probably still care about how you are perceived and what other people think of you, and that is definitely an impediment to becoming that fully integrated person. And I think Johnny says it that way, that men boys can never fully become men before they how does he say it, man? Before they don't care about the approval of others. Like if they don't
A
care about the
man,
approval of others.
yeah. I just, Johnny says, a boy will never become a man until he overcomes his need for approval
Need
by
for
others.
approval. That's it. That's it. Yes, yes. That's it. So, and I think that's very well said. And I noticed it in myself. I still have areas where I kind of have approval seeking behavior, and I yeah, I wish I could I would not have that. And I'm aware of it, and I'm working every time to try and become more fully myself and to be more fully expressed in who I am without looking for the approval of others. But I think that's really the main. I'm curious if you would agree with that. That's really the main task of a man in life, to disavow the approval of other people. What do you think?
Yeah, well, what great man do we know in all of history and time and culture cared about the opinions of others? What truly great man? I can't think of a single one. At a point where, and I think of, you know, the four great conquerors. I think of Napoleon, Julius Caesar, Genghis Khan, Alexander the Great, and these guys, say what you will, but they did something. People know their names, and they went and did something with their lives. They didn't just live a life and then just die, and that was it. And no one knows their names, and that forgotten thousands of years later. Even though everyone that came before us is dead, and equivalently the same. What does it matter to them that they remembered after 1,000 years?
Napoleon was emperor of France in his early 30s. That's my age,
Alexander
man.
was Alexander was 22 when he already,
Yeah, he was even younger. Yeah,
so
so wild.
and these guys they didn't give a fuck what people thought about them, and they went and took their destiny into their own hands. The Jung quote we always talk about: until you make the unconscious conscious. I forgot it actually. I can't.
You will call it.
It will direct your life, and
It
you
will
will call
direct
it
your life, and
fate.
you'll call it. Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's like, are you going to take responsibility for your own destiny or not? Conversation is shifting a bit away from the art of love, but I think these are relevant things. As man goes in search of his wholeness, as he integrates his shadow, as he starts to step away from the bullshit that he is spoon fed on the daily in the society. You can't change your nurture. You can't change your nature, excuse me, or your nurture. You can't change the past, but you can, be inspired by everyone from history that had it bad. Alexander died at 30 something because of lack of, medical technology.
Yeah.
People were drilling holes in people's heads at the time to release the bad blood and the demons. Like we technologically we're in the greatest, if there isn't past societies, things like that, time that there's ever lived. The standard of living is at its absolute highest, and we feel terrible. We feel at our all-time low, like the worst we've ever felt. And men are addicted to porn and have given up on the idea that you can actually get to know and meet women. It's a crazy idea, right? How have we gotten to this point? And then the question I ask you, Marvin, is what is, in your estimation, the way forward? How do we get out of this? How do we be? I know it's just a small question, but
Yeah, such a simple question. I don't have a grand solution. I can only share what I did. So that is find a community, find a mentor, someone you resonate with, that calls forth your heart, and a community of like-minded people that have similar values and are on a similar journey as you are. And I think that's also the best thing you can do for the world. Like, you can't go around trying to change the world and change society. And I mean, you can try, but I think the best place to start is with your own life, your own self. And if you make that the best version possible, then you will also equally have the greatest effect on your surroundings and on society. So I believe in that as the right approach, at least for me. And yeah, you're looking up some quote again, I can tell. Yes. So and I think that's what we're all doing as Amorati. We have the intention of setting out into the world and molding our own path in that world. And through that, we affect all around us. We affect all the people that are families, our friends, our past friends, our lovers, our society as a whole. Like, just by being on this journey, and now we're like through this conversation sharing these thoughts and this journey, so we're already affecting people in our surroundings, in our community, in society. I think that's the way to go, in my opinion.
yeah, I came to the same conclusion. You have to self-individuate. You have to become yourself.
Yeah.
And I searched up for some Confucius. Don't complain about the snow on your neighbor's roof when your own doorstep is unclean.
Yeah, yeah.
Chinese have a great,
They have a
concise,
great-
eloquent way of saying these things.
Yeah, great
Yeah,
sayings. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But the idea is, instead of complaining about, I'll say it strong here because I wish I had heard this. Instead of complaining about other people's success, that's the easy solution. That is the easy road out. That is going to keep you exactly where you are. And you're going to spend your time and energy trying to worry about things that you cannot control. Take that first step in your life. You don't have to sell all your things, break up with your girlfriend, travel the world, and be a mighty or self-imagined mighty next conqueror of the shitty culture we live in. But you can start by, one, finding new friends, finding a new community and brotherhood, even if it means joining one Zoom call a month. Join the one Amorati Zoom call a month. and see what is possible, because it's hard to describe in words, and it's better to illustrate it in our vlogs, which we did for a while when we were all together in Bucharest. And there's a Chinese quote. I'll quote again. I don't have to search this one up because I really internalized it and applies to the coaching that I'm doing now. And that is, tell me and I will forget. Show me and I may remember. Involve me and I will understand. You know, there's this, how much can we convey on a podcast to you who is listening? How much can we really convey? Because it's always going to fall short of the full experience of being there in Rio, in Buenos Aires, in Athens, in Rome, in Bucharest, looking to your side, and wow, you know what? If everything fails and we all die tomorrow and there's an alien invasion, fake or real, and there's an asteroid, at least, you know, I see a brother who's walking not behind me, but walking beside me, alongside me, Marvin. I see you, a brother walking alongside me, searching and fighting for his own meaning in a culture that hasn't given us any real hope or good message. So you know what? Life was good. Life was great. Oh wait, Stan is on this side. And we're all going forward into the unknown, like all of the men of all of time have done. And maybe we're just, you know, egotistical or not that important, because we're really not that important. We are specks of dust. We are but shadow and dust, you know.
Ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
Yes, like your quote, you know, like, but we, you know what? Instead of becoming numb and letting the apathy of your heart take over your life, why not try something different? At least you'll enjoy your life more. You talked about memories, Marvin. Like, at least, you know what? When we were young lads and you're smoking a cigarette or you're drinking wine with your buddies, you know, when we were young, we really put ourselves out there, right? We really we met some pretty famous girls. We did our best. How many men do their best? I wish I had heard this. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to us. I'm extreme. But it needs to be said. These sorts of things, man. I hand it back to you.
Beautifully said. Yeah, maybe let's wrap it on that thought, because I really like the way you encompassed all of what we talked about into that speech, which I really liked. And Wade, yeah, as we said, Wade is kind of a living example of that. And if you want a first step, get the book, get Zan's book, join us for the calls, and eventually maybe even come to Bucharest and come. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, Yellow Brass. It looks pretty used, man. Yeah, see? Yeah, it is used and read multiple times, yeah.
It's used and read multiple times, and in Romania, I mean, we don't have many regrets. One of them is, this is the second copy that I got of the book. In Romania, when I met that girl, you know that girl, I'll tell a full story on a later podcast. I gave her my book, and she just left, and then we never talked again. And it was my first book that I had when I was 16 years old, and so lost, and so horny, and so sad, in such a dark place. And I was like, you know, I really like this girl. I gave her my book, and not only did she not read it, she didn't give it back, you know.
Yeah, man. There's a power to those things. But yeah, so get the book and come join us for the calls and hang out with us. That's
This our story is your story. The names change, but the story stays the same. And if you're brave enough to walk the hero path, to become the hero of your own love story, this is one way. We found this to be true in our lives, and we don't care to convince you to join us. You know, if you feel aligned and if you feel the call, many are called, if you are chosen. Many feel the inkling or the urge for greatness, but I'm so presumptuous, man. Many feel that call to be something more than you already are, and so few act on it. So to you who's listening, I ask if you are one of them, if you're ready to join our ranks and come to Bucharest in 2 weeks for the conference and travel alongside us and be on this mighty adventure of a lifetime. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Marvin, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, man, that's it. That's it. I want to close on that because you said it. You said it really well, and yeah, I invite everybody to take that first step and take action.
Yes, and let us know. We read every comment and what you think of this new format. We're going a bit long on these episodes, but I don't mind. I think it's interesting for us, and we hope it's interesting for you. Perfect. Any updates on the book, Marvin? Any updates on your music, on your art?
Still writing, man. Yeah, yeah. I'm doing a lot of piano because I'm here at home. We have a beautiful old piano, which is a joy to play on and just to look at.
Yeah.
And there's something to that, to these old things that kind of they convey the spirit of older times, of ancient times. There's an energy in that somehow. But no,
Which
so
you don't
far no.
appreciate.
Yeah.
Like when you're a child, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And now as I'm getting older, I'm like, damn, look at that piano. It's been through so much.
It's crazy, man. Okay, this is. Oh man, I just want to add this because it's in the context of Wade, who is into aesthetics and into visual design. This idea of like a lot of Europe, like you European, I'm American. Europeans have the most beautiful architecture, like for centuries, as opposed to these skyscrapers and utilitarian, not beautiful at all glass buildings that we have in the West. And there's that sense of just like when you grow up with a beautiful piano at home, when I grew up with a beautiful neighborhood at home, like, you don't appreciate these things because you're so desensitized to them. And so when I grow up and I see them and have these beautiful streets, women, and architecture, it's like, wow, this is so amazing. But then, like, we don't appreciate the things that we already have, right? And there's that about an aesthetic life. Maybe we can talk about that next episode. But what is like a beautiful life? What's a beautiful death? The conversation doesn't end because I think we're in the realm of the mythic, of the timeless. And yeah, well, we'd love to know what you guys think. And
Yeah, let us know.
this has been the Amatoria quote off. But then we will plan to see everyone on Sunday. And the next guest, I believe, is Stelios. And you guys are in for a treat. What more can I say?
Hell yeah.
So, Marvin, thank you, man. It's been Amatoria Podcast. We'll see everyone on Sunday.
Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye.